It wasn't another nation of idol worshipers. It was his own brothers. Some of your worst enemies look like you, got your last name, might even have your own address. They just don't like the fact that God bless you, because here's the thing, they hate you because they feel like you got what they should have had. They think they ought to be living like you living. They think they ought to be doing what you doing. But what you fail to realize and what they don't understand, you didn't ask for it. God just gave it to you. His daddy gave him a coat of many colors. And if you study the coat, Pastor Brackens, you find out that the coat was a long trench type coat. It had long sleeves.
Right.
The reason why this is important, this was a sign of authority.
That's right.
Those that were workers in the house had either short-cut and short-sleeve or sleeveless shirt coats, so it would not hinder them from their labor. But when you saw somebody walking out the door that had a coat on that was of length and of long sleeve, they were not laborers in the house. They were lords of the house. They were not workers. They were rulers of the house. Now that coat was supposed to go to the eldest son, but because Jacob found favor in Joseph, instead of giving it to his eldest son, he gave it to Joseph. Now here's what you got to understand, Michael, is that God, you never find in the text where Joseph asked God for a dream, neither did he ask his daddy for a coat. They just gave it to him. You missing me right there. You never find in the text where he asked God for a dream or he asked Jacob for a coat. He just gave it to him. Me and Joseph can't be the only one in here that can testify that you got some blessings in your life that you didn't even ask for. God just gave them to you. You don't know why he did it. I'm talking to somebody right now. You in a car that you didn't have the cash or the credit to get. He just gave it to you. I'm talking to somebody that even now you pull up in your driveway and it stupefies your mind every time you drive home because he just gave it to you. I'm talking to somebody that had more education than you. They more had education than you, more experience than you. They had more connections with you. But when they looked for somebody for the promotion, he reached over there and put his hands on you. Tell your neighbor he gave it to me.
Gave it to me.
What do you do? When God gives you favor, but it's still a part of the plan to have fatalities. What do you do? When God gives you a dream, but before the dream can become into reality, it turns into a nightmare. What do you do? When it looks like before you can elevate it, you got to deal with enemies. How do you deal with it in your life when you're walking the right road, but wrong things are happening to you? And you begin to question within your own self, am I doing the right thing? Did I hear the right command? Am I on the right road? Is all of this part of the plan of God? Well, there's three things I need to tell you. First of all, it's a part of the plan to be strict.
My God.
Said that they stripped Joseph.
That's scripture.
They stripped him of his coat.
Yeah.
His coat of many colors. His coat that is daddy gave. But there was another coat waiting on him in Egypt, in Pharaoh's closet, that God was going to give him. The coat that his daddy gave him was a sign of an appointing. The coat that God was going to give him was a sign of an anointing. Now you can take my appointing, but you can't touch my anointing. You ain't catching me right there. And sometimes I gotta lose my appointing in order to make room for my anointing. He had to make room. He had to make room. I believe in my own personal theological philosophy that when God is removing things out of your life, He moves under what I call one of two spirits. He moves under either the spirit of repossession or the spirit of replacement. The spirit of repossession is that God is taking something from you, but you ain't getting anything back. But if you're under the spirit of replacement, He's taking something from you in order to give you something back. And sometimes what you got to understand is that what you're going through now, God may be stripping you, but if He's under the spirit of replacement, He's just taking what you got in order to make room for what's coming better. Let me say it another way. Many years ago, that I was flying in to home from a revival meeting. When we landed, I did my usual procedure. I turned on my phone, called my wife, let her know that I'd made it down to the airport safely. And when she heard my voice, she said, I know you're tired. I know you're still maybe a little groggy from taking your medicine, but I'm in the vicinity. If you would come by the furniture store where I'm at before you go to the house. I went by the furniture store, walked in. She sold me some new living room furniture that she wanted. I said, yeah, baby, that's fine. If that's what you want, that's fine with me. She said, okay, take the boys with you. Make sure that they keep you woke while you're driving down the road. I know you're tired. On your way out, if you could, stop by the cash register and make sure you pay for it. I paid for it. I asked the man, when was he going to be able to deliver it? This was on a Saturday. He said it's going to be Tuesday or Wednesday. Before I could make it there, we really backed up this time of year. I said, okay, that's fine. Me and my boys got in the car, went home. I got in the house, sat down at the chair by the door at the time at the house in which we were living in by the church. A little while later, my wife and the girls walked in the house. She never sat down. As soon as she walked in the door, she started moving around furniture. I said, babe, what you doing? She said, we finna take this furniture to your mama's house. I said, but baby, why we gonna take it now? They said they ain't gonna be able to deliver the new furniture until Tuesday or Wednesday. She never stopped moving around furniture. She just said we finna take this furniture to your mama's house. I said, well, what we gonna sit on till Tuesday or Wednesday when they bring the new furniture? She said you can sit on the floor for as I care. We finna take this furniture to your mama's house. I said, but baby, why we taking it now and we ain't got the new furniture yet? She stopped, stood up, looked me dead in the eye and said, did you just pay for some new furniture? Yes, I did. Did they give you a receipt to tell you that the furniture is yours? Yes, they did. Did they tell you they were bringing you your furniture? Yes, they did. She said, well, I'm getting this furniture out the way because the new furniture is on the way. I'm talking to somebody right now. The reason why God is trying to strip you is not because of what you got, but because of what's on the way. And if I've got to wait until what's on the way, I'm going to get into a traffic jam of God moving the old stuff out and bringing the new stuff in. So in order for the transition to be smooth, He's stripping we right now because of what's on the way. Tell your neighbor it's on the way. Your miracle is on the way. Healing is on the way. Breakthrough is on the way. Deliverance is on the way. It's on the way. Stripped him. If you look in the text, you don't find Joseph wrestling over the coat. You don't find him fighting over the coat. In other words, he just let it go. Tell your neighbor, let it go.
Let it go.
The reason why I said he let it go, because there's no need for me to wrestle over something temporary when something permanent is waiting on me. You ain't catching me right there. Why should I wrestle over a moment when I'm getting ready for a miracle? Why should I hold on to people that's only supposed to be there for a season in my life when He's trying to plant me in a position that's going to be permanent in my life? There's something in your life you need to let go. You ain't caught me yet. Let me prove it to you. For 40 years, one thing was consistent for the children of Israel. Every morning they woke up, they had fresh manna from heaven that the Lord had fed them with. But Joshua said when they spent the first night in the promised land, he made sure to write that there wasn't no manna from heaven the next morning. The reason why it wasn't any manna from heaven the next morning is because they didn't need a wilderness blessing when they were waking up in a promised land miracle. What do I need manna when I'm living in milk and honey? You trying to hold on to something that was only meant to carry you temporarily, and God trying to settle you in your permanent position. You ain't catching me yet. If He want to leave you, help him pack his bag, put him in your car, drive him back to his mama's house, you made that much money. And say to yourself, that was only temporary. If they want to leave your church, give them their letter on their way out the door. They won't tell you, but I came to Mississippi and I will. The choir sing better when they ain't there. Deacon pray better when they ain't there. Preacher preach harder when they ain't there. Crowd church better when they ain't there. Tell yourself that was only temporary. Stripping. Secondly, what kind of is it? It's a part of the plan to be stripped. But also, it's a part of the plan to be shoved. The text says they cast it into the pit. They threw it into the pit. Now, I don't know what they call it or label it in Big Texas. But in Mississippi, whenever somebody moves you from one location to another by force against your will, when that happens, we say you've been shoved. And sometimes God gotta shove you in order to get you where you need to be. Because here's the thing, where you gotta get to, you wouldn't get there voluntarily. He wasn't gonna jump in the pit. He wasn't gonna nosedive in the pit, but he had to be in the pit. So in order for him to get in the pit, somebody had to shove him in the pit. Now here's the thing, the people that shoved him wasn't his friends, it was his foes. It wasn't those that he was intimate with, it was his enemies. So by the time he got out the pit, instead of holding grudges, he ought to have been grateful. Because his enemies, when they thought they were hurting him, they were actually helping him. There's some people in your life that shove you in your path, but instead of being mad at them, you ought to be thankful for them, because you wouldn't be who you are, do what you do, you wouldn't be going like you're going if they wouldn't have shoved you to where you need to be. You've been mad at him ever since prom night your senior year, but taking the boo of your life, now you run into her years later, she got five baby daddies and one of them ain't yours. Go back and tell him thank you. I know you've been mad at her ever since you were in the 10th grade and she took the apple of your eye, the man of your dream, the one you thought you were going to spend the rest of your life with. Now you ran into him at Walmart years later and see how he turned out. Go back and tell her thank you. I know you've been upset with her ever since you asked them to pray with you for a job and they went behind you and got the job. And now instead of being mad at her, if you look at it, the company closed, they lost the job, and you get ready to retire from the one you got because you didn't get that one. Go back and tell them thank you. He had to be in the pit. He needed to be in the pit because, first of all, the pit was preserving.
Yeah.
But once he got in the pit, he still had enemies, but his enemies couldn't reach him. They could watch him, but they couldn't reach him. Once your enemy shove you so far,
Talk.
and you get to where God wants you to be,
My.
your enemies can watch you, but they can't reach you. You ain't catching me in here. That's why David said in Psalms 23 verse 5, he prepares a table before me in the presence of mine enemy. That word before in the Hebrew means to be in the face of. That word presence in the Hebrew means to be in the same room, which is to say David was saying that I got enemies that's in the same room, but they ain't at the same table. So the only thing they can do is stand in the room and watch me eat at the table. Only thing you got to worry about is that your enemies are now your watchers. Tell your neighbor, keep on watching me. Because here's the thing, if they watch you long enough, that your watchers will turn into your witnesses. Because they gonna see what God is gonna do with you if they keep on watching you. Now, guys, I must admit, I gotta be honest with you. holy as Joseph. Joseph needed preservation for one way. I need preservation for two ways. Joseph only needed preservation so his enemies couldn't reach him. I need preservation because my enemies can't reach me, and so I can't reach my enemies. But sometimes I shout, not about what God did, but I shout about what God didn't let me do. Sometimes you ought to shout because of what God didn't let you do in your life. If He'd have let you do it, you'd have a case by now. If He'd have let you do it, you'd be incarcerated by now. If He'd have let you do it, you'd be divorced by now. If He'd have let you do it, you'd be unemployed by now. You drove all over Fort Worth looking for that joker, and you never could find her. Thank God He didn't let you do it. But then also the pit was peaceful. It says it was empty and it was dry. The reason why Moses points this out in his description of the pit, because at this time the pit was used for one or two reasons. It was either used for well water, or it was used for families to bury their garbage. It could have been full of water. And Joseph would have been treading to stay alive. It could have been full of garbage. And he wouldn't have had nowhere to rest until the Lord came to retrieve him. But because it was empty and it was dry, it was a pit. But the pit wasn't that bad. Tell your neighbor it ain't that bad. Maybe you ain't where you want to be. Maybe you ain't doing what you want to do. But if you following the plan of God, it might be a pit. But the pit ain't that bad. But maybe you ain't driving your BMW or your Benz, but thank God the Buick crunk up again and get you to church again. It ain't that bad. Maybe you ain't in your palace, but thank God the project rent paid up to next month. It really ain't that bad. Maybe you ain't got on a Lisa Renee or St. John's or a Dollar Venture, but thank God the dollar store had just your size. It really ain't that bad. Maybe you ain't got on Michael Kors or you ain't got on Prada, but thank God Payless had a sale. It really ain't that bad. Maybe you ain't got a name brand purse on your arm, but here's my philosophy. I'd rather have a no name brand with money in it than a name brand with no money in it. It really ain't that bad. Maybe you ain't making a six-figure salary, but when you clock in the morning, it keeps the lights on, keep the water running, keep blowing. It really ain't that bad. If you really look at it, maybe he ain't Denzel, but Bob the Builder, go to work every day. It really ain't that bad. Maybe you ain't got a mega church, but the folks that showed up this Sunday gonna show up next Sunday. It ain't that bad.
Word, Reverend.
I gotta stop.
No, Reverend.
It was preserving. It was peaceful. It was also prepared. Nowhere in the text does it say that they dug a pit. It doesn't even say that they purchased a pit. It just says that it was a pit, which meant the pit was already there. Which meant that the pit was prepared for Joseph. That's why by the time you see him out of the pit, he don't look like he been in the pit. Because when you look like you've been in a pit, you look pitiful. But because the pit was prepared for you in the pit and don't nobody even know you in the pit. If you would have ran in the Jonah when he got to Nineveh, it wouldn't have looked like he spent 3 nights in a fish's belly because it was prepared for him. By the time you ran into a woman with the issue of blood 12 days after she met Jesus, she don't look like she had just had a 12-year blood problem before she met Jesus. If you ran into the man in the temple when he left from the pool of Bethesda, he didn't look like that he had I gotta stop. Let me quit. I gotta stop. Third and answer. Not only is it part of the plan to be stripped, it's part of the plan to be shoved, but then lastly, it's part of the plan to be shifted. The pit was preserved. It was peaceful. It was prepared, but it wasn't permanent. Don't miss me there. The pit was preserved. It was peaceful. It was prepared, but it wasn't permanent. He wasn't going to stay in the pit. He just had to go through the pit. So when you look at it that way, you really don't have to call it a pit. You can call it a pit stop.
Stop it, Reverend! Don't do it, Reverend!
I don't watch a lot of NASCAR. And the reason why I don't watch a lot of NASCAR is because when I watch it for the wrong reason.
Right.
I don't watch it for the race. I watch it for the wrecks. And since I don't want nobody to hurt themselves, I just try not to watch it. But I have watched it enough to know that the driver is not out there by himself. He has what is called a pit crew. And the pit crew has a manager of the crew that sits above the pit. And he watches the race as it goes. And he communicates with the driver with the intercom in the driver's ear. And he tells him what to do, tells him where to go. He tells him where they need to go down or come up against the wall. He tells him who's in front of him in order for him to get past them to get a better pole position. Matter of fact, if the driver just listened to the manager, the instructions and the direction of the manager can just help him win the race. And while he's watching the race, there's a computer screen in front of him. They got every part and component of the car. And when there's an alert that goes out that says that a part of the car has become defective, he tells the driver to come in for a pit stop. After he tells the driver to come in, he then communicates with the pit crew below him and gives them instruction on what the driver in the car needs. Now the pit crew don't get ready when the driver gets there, but before the driver even gets there, they already standing there with parts and tools in their hand, ready for the driver to pull up. When the driver pulls up, he ain't even got to get out the car. They just get him up, get him fixed, get him down, get him out, get him going. And by the time he leaves, he don't even lose his pole position. But I got a God above me that watches everything I do. He directs me, tells me where to go, tell me when to get down, tell me when to go up, tell me what's ahead in order to get a better position. If I just follow him, he'll direct my path. But he watches me and knows I get defective sometimes. And he tells me to come in for a pit stop. But before I get there, he already got angels at the altar, already waiting on me with whatever I need when I get there. And by the time I walk up to the altar, they get me up, give me this, give me down, give me out, give me going. And by the time I walk out the door, you don't even know I've been through something because I got angels watching over me. You're being shifted. It's being shifted from Jacob's son to Potiphar's slave to Egypt's inmate to Pharaoh's prince. Don't miss me. He's being shifted from Jacob's son to Potiphar's slave to Egypt's inmate to Pharaoh's prince. And when you look at where he's going compared to where he was and what he'd been through, that meant greater was coming. When you look at where he was at and look at where he'd been and then look at the shift on where he was going, that meant greater was coming. I'm talking to somebody right now. You in the shift right now. It looked like God is stripping you, shoving you, but he's really just shifting you. And by the time he gets through shifting you, it will be greater in your future than it was in your past. Greater is coming. When is the shift going to get through? Here's is real simple. When God gets through shifting, that means you quit moving and God start moving. You ain't catching me right there. If you still in the shift, that means God had moved But whenever God's getting to moving, greater is coming. I ain't through, but I'm stopping. That's a story. Remind me of as I go to my seat. There was this little boy. I was raised in the projects. It was just him and his mother.
Do it, Reverend.
Didn't have very much. They scrapped and struggled through life. And he would get ready to go to school. At the beginning of the year in grammar school, the boys in his class would gather together. They began to talk about the clothes they had to wear.
Let's see here, Reverend.
The shoes their parents had bought. They would do what little boys would do. They would hunch and laugh one another. And look at little Joe and say, "Little Joe, what did you get?" Little Joe would just look at him and reply, "God hasn't moved yet." They come back from Christmas holidays. They talk about all the presents that they had under the tree. They laugh with one another and ask little Joe, "What did you get?" Little Joe would again reply, "God hasn't moved yet." Little Joe was not the brightest one in the bunch. He struggled through school. He barely made it to graduation. And at graduation, those boys were still up to their same antics. They were talking about all the scholarships they had received, the awards that had been given to them. They were still laughing with one another, asking little Joe, "What did you get?" Little Joe was still saying, "God hasn't moved yet." They all graduated and went their separate ways. Many years later, they came back to that same city, to that same neighborhood, to that same school, for their class reunion. The men gathered together in the parking lot and began to talk about the clothes they wore, the jobs they worked on, the homes they lived in, the cars they drove, and the women they were married to. And then finally, somebody said, "Where is little Joe?" One of them said, "He's probably still living in the projects."
I hear your voice, Mitchell.
Another one said, "No, he's probably in jail somewhere." Another one said, "No, he's probably living on Skid Row." Another one said, "No, if he's still living around here, he's probably dead." About that time, a muddy green Bentley pulled up on the parking lot. A man got out of it with a tailor-made suit on, alligator shoe, silk shirt and tie, and diamonds for cufflinks. Somebody wondered, who in the world was this man? Until finally somebody recognized him and said, "Little Joe, is that you?" Little Joe said, "Yes, me. How in the world did you go from catching the bus to driving a Bentley?" Little Joe said, "God moved. Ain't the Lord all right?" They asked little Joe, "Where do you work at?" Little Joe said, "Did you see that new building that's been built downtown? That's my building and that's my business." They said, "Little Joe, you barely got out of high school. How in the world did you get a business like that?" Little Joe said, "God moved. Ain't he all right?" They asked little Joe, "Where do you live at?" He said, "Did you see that house that's been built when you were coming in from the airport?" They said to him, "You mean that big house pastor and said, ain't she on TV or something? He said, yes, she is. How in the world did you meet a woman like that? God moved. Ain't he all right? One of them finally said, wait a minute, little Joe, when we were growing up, you used to say, God hasn't moved. And now you saying, God has moved. What does all of that mean? Little Joe said, y'all had a lot of things when we were growing up at your house that I didn't have in mind. But I had one thing at my house that y'all didn't have at yours. I had a mama that believed in Jesus. Ain't he all right? And look, Joe said that I'd come home crying and I'd ask my mama, when is our time gonna come? She'd hug me closer and say, little Joe, God got a plan for you. He just hasn't moved yet. Ain't he all right? He took his wife by the hand and walked on into the reunion. But while he was walking off, he sung the song his mama was singing to get him to stop crying. You can't hurry God. You just gotta wait. Trust him and give him time. No matter how long it takes, he's a God. You can't hurry. He'll be there. Don't you worry. He may not come when you want him, but he'll always on time. Ain't he all right? I'm gone now, children. I'm through with y'all tonight, but I got to tell you, that's how I know that you're in the shift. That's how I know that greater is coming. The reason I know it, because I'm a Christian. I'm a child of God. I want to be more like Jesus in my heart. And Jesus will put in the shift. One Friday morning, they shifted him. They put a cross upon his shoulder. They marched him up Calvary Mountain. I've got to quit here. Good evening, y'all. God bless your heart. I've got to leave you now. But before I go, I got one more thing. I've got to tell you, he was in the shift. They nailed his hand. They riveted his feet. They hung him high. And they stretched him wide. He dropped his head in the locks of his shoulder. Y'all know what he did, Grace. He died. Anybody know he died? They laid him down in a borrowed tomb. But thank God for Jesus. Greater was coming. I said earlier, Sunday morning.